This story isn't about some far-off corporate dispute, but a quiet, determined rancher named Jedediah, a man whose family had worked the same sprawling Texas prairie for 5 generations. His fight began not with a bang, but with a baffling and infuriating discovery that would test the very meaning of ownership. It started on a Tuesday morning under the vast, unforgiving sun. Jedediah was on horseback, doing his daily patrol, a ritual as old as his family's claim to the land. His horse Dust Devil knew every dip and rise of the terrain, but today Dust Devil stopped dead, ears twitching. There, slicing through the golden grass where only a faint cattle trail had been, was a perfectly paved, 2-lane blacktop road. It was new, pristine, and utterly alien. There had been no warning, no negotiation, just a road. He followed the bizarre ribbon of asphalt, his confusion hardening into a cold knot of anger. It led him straight to the horizon, where a massive new housing development was clawing its way out of the earth. He found the developer, a man in a crisp suit and gleaming hard hat, shouting orders into a phone. The man, whose name was Mr. Harrison, listened to Jedediah's complaint with a smirk. "A public access route," Harrison declared, waving a dismissive hand. "Consider it a gift. We've given you a free road, boosted your property value. You should be sending us a thank you card." The sheer arrogance was staggering. Harrison insisted his legal team had found a loophole, a forgotten easement that gave them the right. Jedediah knew it was a lie. His family's hold on this land was absolute. Jedediah wasn't a man for shouting matches. He went to the county courthouse the next day, his worn leather briefcase holding ironclad property deeds that dated back to the 19th century. He laid them out for the developer and the local authorities, pointing to the meticulously drawn property lines. There was no easement, no right-of-way, no loophole. His proof was undeniable. Yet he was met with shrugs and bureaucratic jargon. His official complaints were filed and promptly ignored. The system that was supposed to protect him had turned its back, leaving him stonewalled and alone. But Jedediah was a rancher. He knew that when words fail, you take action. Realizing he was being deliberately pushed aside, he drove his old pickup truck into town. A montage of purpose-driven moments would show him at an industrial supply store, carefully selecting the heaviest, most formidable steel gate they had. That night, under the silvery light of a full moon, he and his most trusted ranch hands worked in determined silence. With the hum of a generator and the clang of metal on metal, they drilled into the fresh asphalt, sinking thick steel posts deep into the ground. They installed the gate right on his property line, a solid, unmoving barrier of defiance. The next morning, the sunrise revealed a scene of pure chaos. A massive traffic jam, a snake of commuter cars and heavy construction vehicles was backed up for miles against the locked gate. Horns blared in a frustrated symphony. Mr. Harrison soon arrived, his face a mask of crimson fury. He screamed at the gate, rattling its unyielding bars, his threats echoing uselessly across the prairie. The silent, imposing gate was his only audience. From a nearby ridge, Jedediah watched the pandemonium unfold, calmly sipping hot coffee from a weathered thermos. The road below remained empty, a silent black scar that now led to nowhere. His land was his again, the quiet restored. The final view settles on the gate, gleaming in the morning sun. Firmly bolted to its center is a brand new sign, its stark white letters leaving no room for argument. No trespassing. It wasn't just a sign. It was a declaration that some things, like a man's home and his heritage, are not for the taking. My neighbor decided to build a new patio, but he made one massive, costly mistake. It all started when I came home from a work trip to find a construction crew finishing up a brand new stone patio in my neighbor's backyard. It was a beautiful, expensive-looking job with intricate stonework and a built-in fire pit. The only problem? It extended a solid 5 feet into my yard, right over the property line we'd both informally respected for years. I was stunned by the sheer audacity of it. I walked over, trying to keep my cool, and pointed out the obvious encroachment. My neighbor, let's call him Gary, just chuckled. He waved his hand dismissively and said it was just a few feet and that I should lighten up. He claimed that moving the patio now would be impossible, and that I was making a big deal out of nothing. His arrogance was infuriating. He was essentially stealing a chunk of my land and telling me to get over it. That's when I decided that if he wouldn't respect our informal boundary, we would find out exactly where the formal one was. The next day, I hired a professional surveyor. It wasn't cheap, but I knew I needed irrefutable proof to deal with someone like Gary. The surveyor spent the morning with his equipment, planting stakes and taking measurements. When he came to deliver the results, he had a strange look on his face. He confirmed that the new patio was without a doubt several feet on my property, but that wasn't the most shocking discovery. He had uncovered a mapping error from over a century ago when the town was first plotted. The true legally recorded property line was actually 10 feet further into Gary's yard than either of us had believed. This revelation was a game changer. The newly confirmed boundary didn't just reclaim the land Gary had tried to steal with his patio. It also sliced directly through his prized, award-winning rose garden. This garden was his pride and joy, a source of immense neighborhood fame and several local gardening trophies. The very land he had boasted about for years, where his champion roses grew, legally belonged to me. The irony was almost too perfect. He had tried to steal a few feet from me and was now set to lose a significant portion of his yard, including his most cherished possession. Armed with the official survey and a letter from my lawyer, I gave Gary an ultimatum. Either he could remove his patio and the rose garden from my property, or I would have them legally removed at his expense. The smug look was finally wiped from his face, replaced by one of pure panic. He had no choice. What followed was a deeply satisfying montage of Gary, stone by stone, dismantling his brand new expensive patio under the hot sun. His prized roses were dug up and relocated to a much smaller patch of soil he had left. The story culminates with the installation of a new permanent fence along the correct, historical property line. The final shot is of my significantly larger backyard, now featuring a clear, empty patch of land where Gary's famous roses once stood. He can often be seen staring out his kitchen window, a look of utter disbelief on his face as he gazes upon the new boundary that his own greed established. He played a stupid game and he won a stupid prize. My story begins on a bright Saturday morning, the kind that usually promises a quiet weekend. But this wasn't just any Saturday. I woke up to a low, persistent rumble, a sound that just didn't belong. Curious, I glanced out my kitchen window and my jaw nearly hit the floor. My field, a sprawling 5-acre plot of empty land that bordered my property and the rest of the neighborhood, was gone. In its place was a sea of cars, hundreds of them, with more streaming in. It turned out our HOA was throwing a massive community festival, and they had unilaterally decided my private property was the official event parking lot. There were minivans parked by my oak tree, and sedans trampling the wildflowers I'd been letting grow. I was furious. Steaming, I stormed out of my house and marched towards the source of the chaos. It wasn't hard to find the HOA president, a self-important guy named Bob, who was gleefully directing traffic onto my land with a fluorescent orange vest and a whistle. When I confronted him, demanding to know what he thought he was doing, he just waved a dismissive hand. "It's for the community festival," he chirped as if that explained everything. "We're a community-first neighborhood, you know. We figured you wouldn't mind helping out." He told me they had no intention of asking anyone to move their cars and that I should just enjoy the festivities. The sheer audacity was staggering. He then turned his back on me to guide a shiny new SUV into a spot right next to my vegetable garden. As I stood there fuming, I watched the seemingly endless line of cars still waiting to get in. Bob, the HOA president, shot me a smug, triumphant look from across the field. He thought he had won. He thought he could just take what was mine and I'd roll over. But as I looked at the long queue of drivers and his self-satisfied smirk, a different kind of thought sparked in my mind. It was a beautiful, petty, and perfectly legal idea. If he wanted to treat my property like a business, then I would run it like one. The anger began to morph into a focused, brilliant plan for some good old-fashioned malicious compliance. I went straight to my garage. A few minutes later, I had everything I needed. I grabbed a large piece of plywood and some bright red and black paint. With quick, determined strokes, I crafted a large, professional-looking sign. It read, "Festival parking, 20 cash only, private property." I even added a little arrow pointing towards the entrance of my field. I then grabbed a comfortable lawn chair, a small folding table, and the metal cash box I used for garage sales. I set up my little toll booth right at the single entrance to my field, the very spot Bob had been manning just moments before. My business was officially open. The first car pulled up and the driver looked confused. I just smiled, pointed to my sign, and said, "Welcome to the festival. Parking is $20, cash only, please." After a moment's hesitation, he shrugged and handed over a crisp $20 bill. And so it began. Car after car rolled up and driver after driver paid the fee. Some grumbled, but most were just happy to find a spot. From a distance, I could see Bob, the HOA president. His face went from confusion to disbelief, then to pure, unadulterated rage. He stomped his feet and gesticulated wildly. But there was absolutely nothing he could do. I was on my own property, and he was the one directing customers straight to my doorstep. It was a beautiful sight. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is what happened next. That evening, after the last car had left and the festival music had faded, I sat down at my kitchen table. In front of me was a mountain of cash. I carefully stacked the bills into neat piles, 10s, 20s, and even a few 50s. The final count was staggering, far more than I had ever imagined. I looked at the stacks of money that the HOA had so kindly helped me earn, then looked directly at the camera with the most satisfied smile I've ever managed. The day had started with a violation of my property rights, but it ended with a very profitable lesson in not underestimating a homeowner with a bit of land and a great idea.